Good morning, everyone. It is 5:45 in the morning, 6/12/2020. So I don't do a lot of these. I'm about to show you a video, and hopefully you can hear it. I'm trying to work on that. Um, and this young lady is in West Virginia, and if you're of a certain mind, you can pick apart a lot of flaws in a couple of her theories here. That's not what I'm going to do today because there are some flaws. There are some things she's talking about that don't legitimize her stance, which is a legitimate stance. Uh, I'm going to try to point out some things that I think are really important here, and ignore the things that I could argue against because I don't think that's the way to go about things anymore. Like, because I mean, I can pick apart her parts. I can tear apart most of her complaints, but there's about 3 or 4 points that are so valid. I'm just not even going to do it. So it's about 5 minutes long, and then I want to talk forever afterwards. But give this lady a chance because I think besides the junk anecdotal stuff, there are some very great. There's some real meat here. Some things to think about. All right, here we go. Wrong button.
Shame on you, and shame on me, and shame on each and every one of us who haven't rattled the windows of these buildings with cries of outrage at a government that thinks their office furniture is worthy of $40,000 a year and families and children aren't. Today I'm here to help you better understand poverty because poverty is my lived experience. And I'm also here to acknowledge the biased beliefs that poor people are lazy and that poverty is their fault. But how do I make you understand things like working full-time for $10 an hour is only about $19,000 a year, even though it's well above the federal minimum wage of $7.25 an hour? I want to tell you about a single mom I met who was working at a gas station. She was promoted to manager, and within 30 days, she had to report her new income to DHHR. Within 60 days, her rent bumped from $475 to $950 a month. She lost her SNAP benefits and her family's health insurance, so she did what poor people are forced to do all the time. She resigned her promotion and went back to working part-time just so she and her family could survive. I can tell you about being above the poverty guideline, nursing my gallbladder with essential oils and prayer, chewing on cloves and eating ibuprofen like they're Tic Tacs because I don't have health insurance and I can't afford a dentist. I have 2 jobs and a bachelor's degree, and I struggle to make ends meet. The federal poverty guidelines say that I'm not poor, but I cashed in a jar full of change the other night so my daughter could attend a high school band competition with her bands. I can't go grocery shopping without a calculator. I had to decide which bills not to pay to be here in this room today. Believe me, I pulled myself up by the bootstraps so many damn times that I've ripped them off. The current poverty guidelines are ridiculously out of touch. The poverty line for a family of 3 is $21,720. Where I live, because of the oil and gas boom, a 3-bedroom home rents for $1,200 a month. So if I made $22,000 a year, which could disqualify me from assistance, I would have $8,000 left to raise 2 children and myself on. And yet the poverty guidelines wouldn't classify me as poor. I Googled congressman's salary the other day, and according to Senate.gov, the salary for senators, representatives, and delegates is $174,000 a year. So a year of work for you is the equivalent of almost 4 years of work for me. And I'm $24,000 above the federal poverty guidelines definition of poor. It would take 9 people working full-time for a year at $10 an hour to match y'all's salary. I also read that each senator has authorized $40,000 for state office furniture and furnishings, and this amount is increased each year to reflect inflation. That $40,000 a year for furniture is $360 more than the federal poverty guidelines for a family of 7. And yet here I am, begging you on behalf of the 15 million children living in poverty in the United States, on behalf of the 1 in 3 kids under the age of 5, and nearly 100,000 children in my state of West Virginia living in poverty, to not change anything about these federal poverty guidelines until you can make them relevant and reflect what poverty really looks like today. You have a $40,000 furniture allotment. West Virginia has a median income of $43,000 and some change. People are working full-time and are hungry. Kids are about to be kicked off of free and reduced lunch rolls because of changes y'all want to make to SNAP. Even though 62% of West Virginia SNAP recipients are families with children, the very same children who cannot take a part-time job because their parents will die without insurance. People are working full-time in this country for very little money. They're not poor enough to get help. They don't make enough to get by. They're working while they're rationing their insulin, and they're skipping their meds because they can't afford food and health care at the same time. So shame on you. Shame on you, and shame on me, and shame on each and every one of us who haven't rattled the windows of these buildings with cries of outrage at a government that thinks their office furniture is worthy of $40,000 a year and families and children aren't. I'm not asking you to apologize for your privilege, but I'm asking you to see past it. There are 46 million Americans living in poverty, doing the best they know how with what they have, and we, in defense of children and families, cannot accept anything less from our very own government. Thank you.
So I like a lot of this gal's message. There's a lot of it I don't, but again, let's try to stick with the really fundamental points she's making. In my opinion, there's a serious problem with the disabled and the poor, people who have qualified for government help, and the trap that creates. Her anecdotal story about that young lady, in my opinion, is an anecdotal situation worth talking about, because that happens a lot. It's not just anecdotal. It's not just one person's story, because you can find the opposite. This is the thing about anecdotal. Generally, when a congressperson comes out and say, "Well, look at this situation. They didn't have health care." Well, look at this situation. More people don't need that health care, and so you're making people pay. Whatever. Usually, anecdotal examples. You can find one on this side, and then you can find one on that side. I didn't button my shirt up all the way. What I want to talk about today is that in that situation with that young lady, you're not going to find the other side anecdotal. People on assistance, with a child on their own, are often, unless they can find a job that leaps to self-sustainability, they can't work, and that's the problem in our society. Because if we're going to be a meritocracy, which I believe we should be, which is a systems based on merit, systems based on the best should rise. People who work harder should get the promotion. There should be a measurement of how effective you are at what you do, and you should be rewarded for putting that effort and that ability, because it makes things easier for everyone. Except that's gotten lost, and so let me explain this. The young lady, she gets a job, she starts working full time, and then suddenly she's no longer able to support her children because her benefits that she was scraping by on equal more than the 40 hours a week, and now she has less time with her children to take care of them, do the housework, whatever she's doing, and she's making less money, and now she's in an impossible situation by trying to improve her situation. There's no way to get, so now, and this is not always true, but but there needs to be a system where the young lady she mentions starts working 40 hours a week, and is able to sustain that job for a year to maybe get a raise to $15 an hour or find a better job, because now she's got a year under her belt. She can go to an employer and say, "Look, I've worked here a year. They're not giving me a raise. You offer better pay. I'll work just as hard for you." This is how the system's supposed to work. You start off low. You prove your worth, right? And then the more consistent you prove your worth or your merit, the better job should become available to you, and you should advance, and then as 5-10 years later, you should be making a living that's worthwhile. Okay. Now, if you're right, conservative, I know where you're going. Let's not go there right now. All right. I know the arguments you're building up your head. I can do them too. Let's not go there right now. Let's try to stay on the problems that this lady has addressed, and they're real problems. So breaking holes in it isn't going to do us much good. So now I'm on disability. I've learned recently that the federal government has updated. So back when I was in my 20s, I'm sorry, in my 20s, I remember I go to work for, I start working for a company or whatever. I'm paraplegic, by the way. So paraplegics get this golden parachute. Not that it's very good, but I can always go back to the minimum amount of disability if I lose my job. And I think that's fair because, I mean, trust me, existing on the minimum amount of Social Security is not existing. It's barely in existence. So if I lost, if I stopped working or lost my job for whatever reason, I had a little bit of a a lead weight parachute. I don't know. But oftentimes, so I'd work for a while, and usually it'd take them 6 months to catch up to me before they'd start taking, shut my Social Security off, right? And then I'd have and then I would actually owe them money because of the months I got money and I was working, all right? So then I'd lose my job, or I'd get fired, or I'd quit, or whatever, and then I'd get back on Social Security, and so where I was making $700 a month, I would only make like $500 a month because I owed them money for overpayment, and so it would take a year of living off even less than minimum before I'd pay back whatever I owed. It was a real pain in the ass. It sucked. So I usually go find another job, whatever, and then it all started. Obviously I wouldn't report because it's tough, especially if you're on the minimum. But now the federal government says you can work for up to 9 months, as much as you want, before they'll affect your Social Security benefits. Is that fair? It's a start. Okay. We need to create social programs that provide those that need the help with enough help that they can exist in a dignified manner, not just barely survive, not be so stressed out because their bills don't match their income, and they've got and I'm not sure how we do that, but we need to start there. Social programs that are flexible. Let me get to this. This one size fits all dichotomy of welfare, of Social Security, of disability, isn't working. Isn't working to get people out of the system. And we're not trying to get people out of the system rudely or abruptly or in a way that negatively. If the only way out of the system is to negatively impact those in the system, that doesn't encourage people to get out of the system. And so if we continue to get more people in the system, well, that's not balance, right? So the system needs to be set up in a way so that those that are able have a smooth path to getting off the system to make room for other people that need the system. And so there's more resources in that system for those that need it. But it's not set up that way at all. And that's a problem. One of the major problems with welfare, or just, I'm not sure about disability, not so much, but welfare and social programs is, I can't save my money. That's a crazy thought. Well, if you could save money, then they're like, well, why are you saving money? You shouldn't be saving this money. Should we spend it on your... Well, if you're poor and you're living below a certain standard of existence already, and you have the thrift and the willpower and the discipline to start taking a little piece of that free money you're getting and putting it over here, right? And even, tightening up the belt even more, living without something else. And gosh, this is such a flawed way of a system. Because if we just get back to first principles, if you ever listen to me very much, which I'm sure nobody does, I like to start from first principles, right? I like to get as far down into a principle, to start there, to see if a philosophy is corrupted or a system's corrupted. The difference between us and primates, one of the major differences is the ability to put off gratification right now for future reward, for future benefits. So that's why we started doing crops. Well, if we just don't eat all the seeds and stuff right now, and we plant a few, we'll have much more food in 90 days. So when you have someone who, for whatever reason, has found themselves in need, and you say, "Oh no, you can't think ahead. You can't use self-discipline and put a little chunk of your money away, because as soon as that chunk of money gets over, I think." So this is my anecdote. I was on the bus with a fellow, and I think he had suffered from a stroke, and he probably already developmental issues and the stroke. Yeah, I think he was he'd saved $2,000, and then as soon as his payee found out, which the payee is supposed to be an advocate, the payee reported it, and they cut off his disability, and the guy was like, "I don't know what I'm not doing." He was like, "I don't know what I'm doing." And he barely could. I'm very patient. And when people that have problems communicating with most of the world find somebody that'll listen to them, which I can't ignore anything. It's a problem. But so when I am riding on the bus and some weird, strange person starts talking to me, I'm almost forced to interact with them because I don't have the ability to ignore them. So, and I like people, and so I'll talk to dang near anyone. And so when this fellow found me listening to his problems, he started flowing, and I'm like, whoa, and so I'm trying to understand what. And man, by the time that guy got off the bus, I was like, that was freaking horrible. And there's so many things wrong with his story, and he didn't know what he was going to do, and he didn't have the mental capacity to figure it out. And if his payee is turning him in because she found out he had $2,000 in a bank account somewhere because he's been saving his money. Okay, so that is a serious problem that they're not addressing fast enough or in the right way. Because every welfare program I've ever heard of does not allow the welfare recipient to accrue assets without penalty. And that, I don't understand that. Well, they shouldn't be driving around in a Mercedes if they're, well, they're not going. It doesn't make any sense. That's such an awful way to think about it. If I'm tightening my monthly existence for future benefits, isn't that the type of mentality we want to be teaching those who maybe got in that situation because they didn't have any self-discipline because they just always blew their money and always got into trouble because the next day they got whatever. It's the wrong mentality to deny people benefits if their situation hasn't changed. If they said, look, I accrued this money over time, right? And a year later, I bought a car, and I'm trying to figure out how to make that work. They shouldn't get penalized because they saved money and bought a car, or maybe they got $1,200 in their, So the corruption, they talk about corruption or the abuses of that. Well, then it's real simple in my mind. All right, if a person gets on welfare, right? 6 months into it, if they're still on it, they should be able to go to somebody and say, I want to set up a $20 a month account, $30 a month account, no questions asked, right? And if they want to do that, that account should be available to them at all times. And they should never be penalized for any assets they buy with that account because they're showing good discipline. Oh yeah, there's a whole lot of ways I can see it being gamed or played. So I'm a drug dealer. I'm on welfare. I'm making extra drug money on the side. So I'm putting that drug money into this account and living off the... I'm not sure that any of this is a bad... It sounds bad. But I have a natural belief that most people, as they rise out of a certain level of disparity, start building more good habits than bad. There are some really bad people that will just game it to the end. But I think because we're social creatures, we're social animals, and everybody knows that, nobody likes a cheater, so being as honest as you can is beneficial. I think if we give most people the benefit of the doubt, and seriously, just ignore the gamers. So, what's the worst that's going to happen? They're going to get a side job on the table, and they're going to take the whole check and put it in their savings. Well, that's kind of obvious, There's got to be a way, but conservatives tend to hate the idea of somebody getting free money and oh my God, they're going to save it and drive a car later. They don't get it. If you're not allowing a poor person to have incremental improvement in their life, they're just going to not improve, and then they're going to pick up bad habits, which are far too easy to pick up. All right, so there's that. I've gone on about that. We've gone on a long time. So another point. I'm running for governor of Washington State. Jay Inslee gets $180,000. $180,000 a year. Now in Seattle, Olympia area, that's probably not that much. I don't know. Seattle's got a housing problem. It costs too much, just like San Francisco. Most democratically run cities have rent control, price control. New York, San Francisco, Seattle. It costs way too much to live in a box there. That's all I can say. Okay. So, could it be that because a politician justifies his wage by the price of housing, if the housing goes up, then they can justify giving them more wage. And if that wage is going into the house, when they retire, they sell the house, and they're stinking rich somewhere else. These are the games of white elitists. That's bothersome. The point she makes about $40,000 in furniture is West Virginia is going to say, look, in the area we live, The price of furniture is more expensive than in there she lives, and therefore it's justified because this is where we have to do business, and so this is where we have to do business. Our salaries should reflect on our area. Blah 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 blah. It's a scam. In an early video, I talked about moving the capital over here to Spokane or Moses Lake, simply because the cost of living is so much less. Then we wouldn't have to pay all these crooks, politicians, as much money as we are, because that's what they're going to do. They're going to be the legislator. They're going to be a lieutenant governor, the governor. They're going to be whatever, and they're going to get paid exorbitant wages because the area they live in is overpriced. And then when they retire from the legislature, they sell their house, they move to a less expensive area of the country or the state, and they're rich as fuck. Pardon my language. Because the money they were getting paid wasn't actually used. It's complicated. So yeah, I have a problem with overpaid politicians. Which brings up a reason why you should vote for me. I'm broke. You can trust a broke person. A broke person isn't corrupted yet. Because why would they be corrupt? They're not getting money from anybody. Buy me off. I could use the money. No, seriously, I'm broke. Let's say I do get elected governor. It's going to be really easy to track my existence because I'm starting off with nothing. I don't have any trust funds. I'm not a trust fund baby. I got no investments that mysteriously got rich somehow, right? I got no foundations that are getting donations and all that, right? So it's going to be really easy to see who's buying me off if they do. So being broke, and here's why you can trust a broke person. They don't have any options. If I'm working for you and you're paying me good and nobody's going to pay me better than you, I don't really have options. Now, if I'm suddenly a wheeler and a dealer and I got options over here, this person wants to pay me, this person wants to pay me, I got different areas. Maybe I'm not so loyal anymore because I got options. Options breeds disloyalty. I don't know. It's a way of looking at it. Yeah, $40,000 in furniture. The points she's making about the extravagance of politicians is a fundamental problem because our government wasn't set up for people to be politicians for profit. And almost all of them are. Jay Inslee, 7 years as a lawyer? Right? 7, 8 years? Right? Lived a spoon-fed life. Went to anybody that's going to UW, just going to UW is living better than, most poor people live. The dorms are better, right? The lunchroom's better. The conversations are better. What do you need, right? So, Jay Inslee's been a representative or a governor or some sort of politician. I think it says he was like 37, 34. So he went to UW till he was like 22, 24. Wasn't smart enough to be a doctor, so he ended up being a lawyer. I heard he's a pretty good guy in Yakima. I heard a lot of people liked him down there. Spent like 7 years down there. Is that about right? 24, 31. Yeah, so somewhere along the line, he took up the politicking and never looked back. He's been a career politician ever since. Never really held a job besides lawyering. I'm not sure that's a real job. It's hard, but I'm not sure it's a real job. Arguing with people all day, it's hard to be a paralegal. It's hard being a paralegal. Being a lawyer, not so much. You get to argue all day, bloat, rah, 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 rah. I love doing that shit. Pay me to do that. I win a lot too. Oh. Boy, this one got long. So, anyways, there's some serious problems when we want to talk about fixing poverty that conservatives, because there's so many things she said that was grossly mistaken about the situation. But I didn't want to go there. I don't want to go there. There's probably some other things in there. There's quite a few things in there, but those are the things that stood out that are absolutely fixable, right? They are fixable right now, you know. But who's going to cut their own hand? Who's going to take the pay cut in our Washington State government? Well, I will, because half that money is a freaking raise for me. You can cut that sucker in half, and it'll be a raise for me. By the people, for the people, of the people. These people are elitists. They're royalty. They're nobles. And this is why we have craziness. Because we're not England. We don't recognize nobility. We don't recognize, a parliament and knights and sirs and lords and ma'ams and Wales. Wales. So if you have a aristocratic government, but it's calling itself a democratic representative government, that's going to mess things up. So either we adopt British government, or we correct ours. Anyways, thanks for listening, guys. That's everything. Oh, wrong button.